Hey guys, Bailey Namir here, and today I'm going to show you how to make a really simple and delicious homemade stew. Now, I got the inspiration from this from a local restaurant called King Kong, and I went there, and the best thing on the menu was this beef stew stuff that they served on top of rice. And while this isn't exactly what they had, this is as close as I've come. So if you have a better suggestion on what to call this other than Greek inspired beef stew, let me know and I might change the title of the video. But honestly it's simply seasoned and it's delicious, and I'm going to show you how to make it. So let's get started. Alright guys, so the first step to making this recipe is cutting up your onion. I personally think that you need to cut the onion up super fine, so try to do that. And you can use any type of onion that you want or have. Last time I made this, I used purple onion, but this time it's a sweet yellow. I've showed you guys a couple of times in previous videos how to do this. However, to cut an onion up really small, just go like this on the top. Try not to go all the way back to the core there. And my onion is just falling apart. But after you slice the top, then you go onto the bottom like this. Be very careful when you do this. You don't want to accidentally slice your hand open. And then you just slice. If you can't do that or you don't feel safe doing it, slice it up as best you can and then just go through and do this. Now for the next step, and this is actually an important one, cutting up the potatoes to the right size that you need them. I want this to be a fairly quick cooking stew. However, if you had the time and the gumption to let this cook for a lot longer, feel free to make the potatoes a little bit bigger. I am using yellow or Yukon Gold potatoes. However, any potato will work. I just like the creamy and deliciousness that comes in the yellow potatoes. I want these to cook super quickly because I don't have time to cook this all day. So I'm going to cut them into about 1/4 to 1/2 inch cubes. You really don't want them any larger than that. Try to make them all about the same size like that and set them in a bowl to the side, just covered in water so they don't turn brown. I've switched my cutting board and I'm ready to do my meat now. This here is a big hunk of pot roast, basically chuck roast. This is beef. I have not tried this recipe with anything but beef. However, I imagine lamb would probably work. You need about 2 pounds for this recipe. And I just want to break this down into manageable bite-sized pieces, basically. Totally up to you how big you want them. The smaller you cut them, the quicker they cook and the more tender they tend to get. So I do like to make them around the same size as my potato, maybe a little bit bigger. Sometimes if you buy a chuck pot roast, you end up with a lot of fat that covers the bottom sometimes or covers the sides. And if you want to, feel free to remove that. It's not going to impact the final dish. Or if you get a lot of this really chewy fat, throw that to the side, put it in the stock pot next time you make stock. You're basically just going to want to cut these up into, I would say no bigger than that, maybe 1/2 to 1/4 inch size pieces, just like we did the potatoes. Okay, so I'm gonna heat my big pot up to, I always do medium high because that's just how my stove works. I'm gonna be using ghee. I will have a video going up on how to make this, so check out that. If you don't have ghee, the first time I made this, what I did is I did a 1/2 tablespoon of just regular salted butter and a 1/2 tablespoon of any oil of your choosing, just to help the butter from not burning. But if you have ghee, it's not only flavorful, but it doesn't burn. Now we're just going to put in our onion. Now you're just going to want to cook this for probably 3 to 4 minutes until they soften up, and if you want, until they start to brown. Hopefully you guys can tell, but it's been about 4 or 5 minutes and my onions are just starting to get nice and golden. There's a little bit of brown on the bottom of the pot, and that's exactly what I'd like. Now I'm going to add in my beef. I've got a quart of water here. I don't know how much we'll need. Depending on your pan, you may need more, you may need less. So scrape all the onions off the side. And then I want you to scrape the bottom of the pan a little bit to get that delicious fond off. Any that may have been created from the onions and the beginning of the meat browning. also going to add just a little bit of salt. You can wait until the dish is completely cooked if you want to, but I'm going to add a little bit now because I think it really helps to season the meat. Stir that up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw a lid on it. And I'm going to bring this back to the boil and then turn it down so that it's just bubbling. And I'm going to cook this for anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes until a piece of meat is really tender. I ended up cooking mine for about 50 minutes. And I did have to add an extra cup of water because mine almost cooked all the way out. There you go. You can see they've shrunk down and they are very tender. There's no resistance to the fork when I put it in. Now we're going to add more water. And I'm going to add these into my pot. And now you're going to add enough water to cover the potatoes. For me, this took about 1.5 liters of water. Stir again if need be. And you're probably going to want to go ahead and crank your heat back up so that you can bring it up to a boil quicker. Put your lid on, and you're going to want to cook this until your potatoes are fork tender. This is probably going to be 15-20 minutes, depending on how big you cut them. But you're going to want to check about every 5 minutes just in case. Okay, so it took about 18 or so minutes for my potatoes to be fork tender. Delicious. And I'm going to add in my tomato paste, and just for convenience sake, I don't know if you've ever tried to mix in like garlic powder and onion powder and they kind of just float on top and they're kind of gross. What I do is I just pre-mix them with the tomato paste, and that way they don't congeal. A really easy way to do this is just to kind of squidge it up against the side of the pan. That way you don't have big clumps. After you're sure that the tomato paste has dissolved and it is nicely mixed in, add the rest of your ingredients. Here I have my canned green beans and my canned northern beans. I have rinsed the northern beans off well, but I have not rinsed the green beans, and I'm just going to go ahead and add them in. Now at this point, this is ready to serve. However, I do not like this to have a lot of soup. I prefer for this to be a really thick, like almost like a chowder that I serve on top of rice. So I'm just going to boil out some more water. So when it gets to your favorite consistency, check for salt, adjust as needed, and you're done. So here you go, guys. Here is the final product. It is very hot, but you can see it is super thick and it's delicious. I'm going to serve mine on top of some basmati rice. My husband is eating his on top of some cornbread. You can eat it just like this with a spoon, but again, put it on something else. You can eat it with toasted up bread. It's honestly good no matter how you have it. And normally I would try my food, but this is seriously hot, guys, and it needs to cool down, and I do not want to scald myself. If you guys want the full written recipe, including all of the amounts needed to make this recipe, links will be down in the description as always. If you make this recipe, please leave me a comment and let me know what you thought, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and share with your friends, and have a fantastic day. Bye!